Welcome, Gunrunner.
You don't need to touch your shop.
Tetris.
How do you even Tetrisize?
Square, rectangle, trapezoid, tetrazoid. Nintendo introduces Tetris. Put a piece here, put a piece there. Use your thumbs, use your eyes. Find yourself Tetrisized. Now you're playing with power.
You all know about Tetris, right? The Russian block dropper that has gone on to become the biggest selling multi-format game of all time. Can you even name a system that Tetris hasn't appeared on in some form or another? The controversial story behind Tetris has been covered to death over the years, and everyone knows about the trials and tribulations of its creator Alexei Pajitnov, and his battle to take the game back from his Soviet overlords. If you don't, then Google it, because I don't have time for that here. Sorry folks. What about the story of its sequel? If you replied which one, then we're already on the same page. But I bet you didn't know that there are no less than 5 different games that lay claim to being its successor. This is the crazy story of 5 games that lay claim to being the real Tetris 2. The first title under consideration here was designed by none other than Tetris creator Alexei Pajitnov himself. So case closed, right? If only it were that simple. If you ask Alexei what the sequel to Tetris is, then he will understandably say Weltris. After all, it's an evolution of the same game, simply taking the block dropping concept and transforming it into 3D. It also has the right lineage to be considered a true sequel, and was very much marketed as such when it was released for a multitude of home formats by Infogrames and Spectrum Holobyte respectively, as well as in the arcades by Video System. However, it was later discovered that Weltris wasn't exactly an original product, and Pajitnov had been somewhat inspired by somebody else's game. That title was California Dreams Blockout. While California Dreams were very much an American company, the development of the game had actually occurred in Poland, and it was here that Pajitnov first saw it and decided to borrow some of its ideas. I say borrow. Let's face it, he pretty much just ripped it off completely, and the ultimate irony of this is that Blockout is actually the much better game, due to it being in proper 3D, rather than some kind of strange halfway house like Weltris. To try and make amends, Pajitnov then created the bizarre Hatris, as a second attempt at a Tetris sequel, but his reputation was already somewhat burned, and that game soon faded into obscurity. In 1988, Atari Games became the first people to bring Tetris into the arcades, and it was a huge success for the historic company. So it's only natural that they would want to follow this up with a sequel, and it pretty much fell into their lap. In early 1990, games designer Dave Akers, who had previously worked on Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters, showed his bosses at Atari a demo of a new puzzle game he had created in Amiga Basic called Clax. They were very impressed by his work and quickly partnered him up with long-serving games designer and producer Mark Stephen Pierce to get it finished as soon as possible. Atari soon discovered that calling it Tetris 2 was impossible due to the terms of their original license, as well as a rather nasty lawsuit from Nintendo that had been fought out the year before. Let's not go into that here, as there's a whole video in itself, but it ended with Atari Games destroying over 100,000 copies of their Tengen branded Nintendo NES port and relinquishing any rights they had over the game. But there was nothing to stop the marketing people at Atari Games telling anyone that would listen that Clax was in fact the sequel to Tetris and should be very much considered Tetris 2. In reality, aside from both being puzzlers, the games were actually very different, with Clax being all about matching coloured tiles rather than slotting odd-shaped bricks into place. Staying in the year of 1990, we come across undoubtedly the most intriguing and mysterious game on this list, Ultrasoft's ZX Spectrum exclusive Tetris 2. This game was developed by one František Fuka, who ran the amusingly named Fucksoft. Oi, you, stop sniggering at the back. Anyway, the story goes that Fuka loved Tetris and was desperate to make a version of his own, and had managed to gain the full permission to produce one by Alexei Pajitnov himself. He then worked with his friend Thomas Roletko to create the game and claims that they finished it in just 14 days. After finishing Tetris 2, he subsequently sold the game to publishers Ultrasoft to be released across Eastern Europe. The game features two modes. The first one is a normal Tetris mode and the other one is Tetris 2 mode. The former contains the same gameplay as the original game, the latter contains almost 100 levels, each of them consisting of a diagram of some shape. The player must complete a task given to him in every level. There are 3 different tasks in total: fulfill your quota, destroy all the bricks, and beat the clock. The player advances to the next level even if he fails but loses 1 life. On every 5th level there's a bonus that allows the player to obtain an extra one. Tetris 2 also offers a multiplayer mode too. Although it was long thought that Tetris 2 was somewhat official due to the Pajitnov connection, Fuka's story has very much been called into question in more recent years. In online interviews with Fuka, his story about how the game came about changes quite erratically, adding more weight to the argument against its authenticity. And we stay in the year 1990 for the next entry too. Although the actual story behind Columns starts as far back as 1984, the very same year that the original Tetris game was first released. A fellow named Jay Gertson developed Columns when he was working as a software engineer at Hewlett-Packard. The first version of the game was in black and white and could only be played on HP's own large mainframe computers. A similar monochrome version appeared on the Mac too. With the help of some friends, Jay produced colour iterations for the Atari ST and PC-DOS. It was the latter of these that caught Sega's eye, and the timing couldn't have been better. In late 1988, Sega had released their own arcade version of Tetris that was exclusive to Japan. It was then announced as one of the first games for their new Sega Mega Drive console, and penciled in for an early '89 release. But no sooner had Mega Drive Tetris hit the shelves than it was withdrawn pending a potential lawsuit from Nintendo. An agreement was soon reached and all copies were destroyed, much like Tengen's Tetris game before it. Still smarting from this unfortunate turn of events, Sega wanted a new puzzle game to replace it, and Gertson's Columns seemed like the perfect fit. They soon paid him for the complete rights to the game and branded it as their own product in the arcades, and on all their own home systems. Sega were also referring to Columns as the follow-up to Tetris, much like Atari had done with Clax in North America. No doubt unaware that a game called Tetris 2 already existed in Eastern Europe, or perhaps they just didn't care, Nintendo set about making their own official sequel to the game in 1993. Originally known as Tetris Flash in Japan, Nintendo's game was released for the NES, Game Boy and SNES in 1993 to a very mixed reception. While some seemed to love the fact it offered something different, others hated that it changed the gameplay so radically. In all honesty, Tetris 2 has more in common with another Nintendo puzzler in Dr. Mario rather than the original game. The playfield is scattered with coloured bricks and you have to drop the patterned tetraminos onto them so the colours match up in 3 adjacent squares or more. Once you've cleared the coloured bricks, it's on to the next stage. See, I told you it's just like Dr. Mario. It's kind of ironic that the game that carries the official Tetris 2 title isn't actually a proper sequel at all, and just a lazy reskin of another game that Nintendo created at a cynical cash-in. Bad form, boys, bad form.
Man, this Tetris 2 is giving me a headache. And I don't even have a head.
So what have we actually learned from all this? Well, the official Tetris 2 is obviously Nintendo's one, as they had the full legal rights. But is it a proper sequel to the classic block dropper? No, I don't think so. And out of all the games I mentioned in this video, I think Weltris is the one that most feels like a genuine sequel. It's an evolution of the same gameplay, simply moving it into 3 dimensions. It was created by Pajitnov himself, and even the name alludes to it being a follow-up with the tris bit on the end. But what do you think? Which of these titles do you consider to be the real Tetris 2? Or did you have another game in mind? Please let me know in the comments. I'm always interested to hear from my viewers. I hope you enjoyed this look back in time, and if you're new to my channel, then please take a look at the rest of the documentaries in my Story of series for more great historical flashbacks. But before I go, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. giving special thanks to the following patrons in particular: Fonda Fundington, John DiLiberto, Carl Olson, Jason Johnson, Chaotic, Seth Robinson, James Taylor and Coldar Fusion. If you also want to help support my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to a host of extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.